Hi all, welcome back to my channel, Quilter Chris. My name is Kristen and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to talk about my Moxie long arm. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today is, let me back up. I have been quilting since about 1999. And I spent a lot of that time period not really knowing what a long arm was or how it worked or anything about it. So I thought I would share with you my long arm and kind of the process I went through to purchase that and why I purchased it, how much it cost. I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can. If you have any others, please make sure you put them in the comments. Additionally, if you like this video, if you get anything out of it, please like, subscribe, comment. I would really appreciate it and it would do me a lot of good. As a side note, I do have a notebook here that has a lot of my notes, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. So I purchased, this is the Moxie long arm quilt machine. There's an XL version and a standard version. This is the standard version. It has a 15-inch throat space. I purchased this last December, that is December of 2024. I have an 8-foot table. This is the table that comes standard with it. You can get an extension for it. I will show some other pictures in the video. My husband made me a light bar out of PVC pipe to go over it. And so that's what I use for my light. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit and why I chose this one. Prior to even researching a long arm, when I first started quilting, I hand quilted a lot of my quilts. I had a very large frame that was made out of PVC pipe that I purchased at Joann's, and I would hand quilt the quilt. Usually they had this thicker cotton, they called it hand quilting thread, and that's what I used to quilt my quilts. So it often took me a long time. I would sit and do it while I was watching TV or my kids were doing homework, things like that. So this was not a new experience to me because prior to quilting, I had been big into cross stitch and embroidery. And so it was the same sort of thing. My quilting designs were very basic. So fast forward about 10 years from there, we moved, we relocated, and we had a little bit more money, and I purchased a basic Janome machine. And I'll show you the picture of it. This machine I purchased on Amazon. Prior to that, I had just been using a Kenmore machine that my mother had gotten me for, I think it was my 21st birthday. She spent about $120, and I used that for all my quilting and piecing, and it worked great. I am over 50 years old, and I still have that machine. I don't use it, but it worked great. Anyway, about I think it was 2010, maybe 29, I purchased the basic Janome, the green machine. And it was green and white. It was actually very similar colors to this. And I did all my sewing on that. And I learned how to machine quilts on that. So I basted the quilt on the floor with the quilt top, batting, and the backing. I used safety pins. My children were enlisted to help me. We crawled around on the floor. We basted the quilt, and I did meandering designs on that basic machine, and it worked great. So I did that for a few years. I followed another quilter who's on here called Leah Day, and she talked a lot about different quilting designs and really like putting it together. And I ended up upgrading my machine to the Janome 7700. Again, also a great machine. I still have that machine. I believe it has a 10-inch throat space. So I use that machine the entire time to quilt my quilts. All of my quilts, I quilted on there. In a domestic, basically scrunching it up in the neck of the machine and then moving it around in free motion quilting. Meandering is what I did. Later on, I've done swirls, but I did them all on that Janome 7700. And I used it for a long time, and it's also a great machine. My daughter uses it. I'll show you some pictures of it as well. So then recently, about 4 years ago, I think it was 2021, I purchased my Bernina. I have a Bernina B570, also a domestic machine, and it had a smaller throat space, but the stitch definition was better than on my Janome. And it came with the stitch regulator, and so when I quilted on it, the stitches were all even, but the throat space is much smaller. I think it's about 6 or 7 inches, nowhere near as big as the Janome was, the 7700, and nowhere near as big as this. So during this time, I had heard about long arm quilting machines, but I had zero idea of how they worked. I didn't know how they quilted it. I just did not know. I had a really good friend who got a long arm, and I brought her some quilts, and she quilted them beautifully. They were amazing, but I didn't understand with the batting or making the backing and the batting bigger. I didn't understand all of that. It looked like just this really complicated machine. When I saw it, she had redone her one-car garage to be this quilting room, and her machine took up almost the whole space. She could walk around and everything, but it was the main view of this space. So I wanted to talk to you about this and how it works and what it does and why I picked this machine. So this long arms in general, so long arms come with a table. That's this part where you put your quilt. It has these bars so that you can put tension on the quilt. And then it has a carriage on it that makes it so that you can move the machine around. This Moxie is, I think it's probably one of the lowest end long arms that there is. This setup here that I have, just the basic before any extras that we'll talk about, cost me $5,000. It doesn't have a spiffy computer. It is just me moving the machine. If you want to get a computer system for it, it is the Pro Stitcher Lite that you use, and it can mount up on the top of the machine. What other machines or solutions did I think of before I did this? So I never really sent my quilts out to be quilted. I didn't have the money to send out my quilts. If I couldn't figure out how to quilt them, they wouldn't have gotten quilted. So what other options did I think of? I thought of, they have these frames that you can make, and you can put a domestic on there, and then you can move it around. I did think about doing that, but sometimes those frames were very expensive, like $200, $300, $400, and that felt cost prohibitive for like an in-between item. It seemed like maybe I should just save up for a long arm instead. Long arms have always been about the price of a car, right? They go for about $15,000 to $30,000. That was not something that I had. So we thought about, my husband and I, we thought about other options to kind of jerry-rig a domestic, but I didn't really have an extra domestic to do. So I just felt like that wasn't an option. I would keep doing what I was doing. Then I think it was about 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, Handi Quilter came out with the Moxie, and it had a much lower price point. It was about $5,000, and it had stayed pretty much at that price, about $5,000. And I thought, well, this is something that I could really do. I was concerned though, because I do work full time. I still have a child at home, and I homeschool her, and I was like, how am I going to do this? Well, I bit the bullet and I got it. Now, of course, with these types of things, it's never the one price you see advertised. So for the basic machine and the table was $5,000. I did purchase some extra things that I will show you. This is called, and mine's a little dusty, I haven't used it in a while. This is called a ruler foot table. And it slides, you wouldn't be able to see it, it slides on the bottom here, and it provides a base so that you can quilt with rulers. So these are the rulers. Some of these are Handi quilter rulers. Some of these are creative grids. It's kind of hard to see because they're clear. They are about 1/4 of an inch thick. And really, the foot that comes on the machine, you shouldn't use with these. You should use a ruler foot. So it is called a sure foot. Comes in a case like this. This is what it looks like. Basically, the shaft of that foot is about 1/4 inch. So I had to purchase this. These feet run about $30 each. They come in a very nice case, but still $30. So I did purchase this, and I have purchased another foot. It's like a glide foot, so that is actually on its way. That's a new foot that I purchased. It came with a bobbin winder, so you put your thread here, you put your bobbin here, you plug this in, and it winds your bobbins. I have not tried this for domestic bobbins because I have a working bobbin maker on my domestic machine, but I have used this for bobbins for my industrial machine. It actually uses the same size bobbins. I also purchased a quilt from the back kit. Basically, this gives you a very thin, like table sort of thing in the back, and I'll show that to you. And you use pantographs on there. And how a pantograph works is it's a design. You can kind of see the design. And you roll it out and you lay it on the back of the table. And then you sit behind the machine and you move the machine. There's a little laser light, and you move the machine and you follow the pattern, and it quilts it on the quilt. It sounds very straightforward and easy to do. It takes a lot of practice. In order to get the pantographs to look nice on the quilt, it takes some practice. You have to make sure it's in the right position on the quilt. You have to make sure it's not too wide for your quilt. It can just take a little bit to learn. After a year, I'm still not great at it, but I keep trying. But pantographs, these cost, so I buy these online. I have to print them out and tape them together, or you could print out one page and then you can copy it onto freezer paper. I have done that as well. You have to be wary of the size, because although this is 15-inch throat space, you run up against this bar. So I think the total space you have to quilt with is about 11 inches. The other thing you have to purchase is thread. I didn't think I would have to purchase thread. I had always used Aurifil 40 weight in my domestic. That's what I had quilted with. I assumed I could use that in the long arm, and you can. But it's a little more frustrating to get the bobbin just right. There are bobbin meters you can purchase to make sure the tension's right on the bobbin. I do not have that. So what I went with is glide thread. You can see that here. This is what it looks like. I buy these bigger cones. Sometimes I will find a sale and I will buy little cones. And then I also use, by Superior Threads, I like this Fantastico because it is a variegated color. It's hard to see on here, but I have a few of these. Because this ends up being like an industrial machine, so one of the issues that you often run into can be tension, and is the tension working? So that can happen when you are winding a regular bobbin, and it's super frustrating. So in using the glide thread, what I found are pre-wound bobbins. So these bobbins, there comes about 10 or 12 in a jar. You can get them to match most of your thread, usually an exact match. Sometimes it's just really close. This is what they look like. So you can see there's like a plastic part here, and then on the back you see a black part. That is a magnet. So this you load into your bobbin case, and you just don't have the tension problems that you do when you wind your own bobbin. So to me, that was worth it. So some things that I haven't purchased for the long arm, and do I think that it's worth it or not? So on my long arm, I think you can see here, I have this netting. This netting is to hold my batting. So on this quilt, I don't have the batting yet. I have the backing that you can see right here. This is the top, and I will put the batting on this as well. And you can see in one of my previous videos, I have a video where I load the long arm, and you can see how that works. Some things I didn't buy, I haven't bought. You can buy an extension that will extend this out 2 more feet. I have not purchased that. You can buy a light by Handi Quilter. I did not purchase that. My husband rigged this up for me. And then the computer, I haven't purchased that. Mostly because those are outside my price range. I would rather pay for Disney trips than to pay for those spiffy things. So it's a choice, right? So what do I do with my long arm? Now, before I made this video, I was watching videos about other people who had their Moxies, and some people do really amazing things, right? They piece on this, they put binding, they use it to put their binding on, they do applique with it, they just do some really amazing things. I don't do any of that. I do straight up free motion quilting. Most of what I do is just a meandering. I feel like it looks good on everything, and after you wash it, you can't even tell. I do swirls, which I really like. I feel like that adds a little bit of extra texture, and it looks great. And I sometimes do the pantograph maintenance on this machine. So what do I have to do? Well, because I'm using this polyester thread, and that's what these all are, polyester, I have very little fluff in the machine. But what I do is every time I change the bobbin, I use the can of air, and they do say you can use a can of air on it, but I use a can of air on the bobbin case. This is not me recommending that you use a can of air if you're not comfortable. They do say that it is okay to use it, like in the instructions. So do with that information what you will. In any event, I use the can of air to clean out any fluff that's in there. I then oil the bobbin case area, and then I put in a new bobbin. I also often use a square piece of batting, and I use that to wipe down the rails in the back. And so that just keeps the carriage moving smoothly so that it works great. Delivery. So I purchased this from a local quilt shop. So I went, it's not super local. It's about 40 minutes away from me. It's in the Baltimore area. It's called Springwater Designs. I went in there. They had several long arms set up. I was able to use and practice it. And then when I was ready to purchase, I called them and ordered it over the phone, and then they had it delivered. It came in about 3 different packages. It was fairly simple to put together. Although I didn't put it together, my husband put it together for me. And it worked great. It went well. They called several times to make sure it was fine. Her husband puts them together all the time. We had set up an appointment for him to come out, but it was Christmas time. It was going to take him a few weeks. My husband was super happy to put it together for me. He's retired. He's at home. He didn't have a problem with it. I think it just took him a few hours. Do I have any regrets with purchasing this? Or is there anything that I wish it would be different about it? I am so grateful that I can afford to get a long arm. I no longer have to baste my quilts on the floor, either with safety pins or basting spray. When I was pregnant with my last daughter, who's now 12, I was on the floor, crawling around on the floor, spray basting the quilt. And then my children come home and are like, "What are you doing, Mom?" And then they did it for me. And I don't have to do that anymore. So that is great. I am super thankful for that. Having said that, a couple of things. I do not have the money to go and spend $30,000 on a long arm. I could get into debt and I could purchase it, but that's just not something that I want to do. I think it's very much a manual machine. There's no buttons to press and just have it be perfect. Except for the stitch length, there's no other spiffy buttons. You watch these videos about these long arms where they set the channel lock so it will only do straight lines. There's no channel lock on this. That you use these little circles that freeze the wheels. There's nothing when something goes wrong. There's a little screen and it'll give you like this lightning bolt that something's wrong. But when something's wrong, you usually have to go and look it up. Those are really minor things. Like they haven't been huge at all. The thing I was worried about most was the tension, and I solved that with the pre-wound bobbins. I think that the stitch quality is just fine. It could be better. The throat space is small, and the machine is really loud. Not that other long arms aren't loud. I just feel like overall it's a little clunky. But I don't think that should stop you. If you are interested in this machine and you want to use it, I think that it would be a great machine and that you should use it. I think that there's a lot of good things about it. So, will I get a spiffier machine in the future? Maybe, if I win the lottery. I don't know. But for now, I think that this is great and I am super grateful to have it. I hope that if you watch this video that it was super helpful and you learned something and I didn't just ramble this whole time. And I so appreciate you watching. Thank you so much.